All right, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar presented by Savvy Health Solutions. Our topic today is about supplements, and the question is, do you need them? Our presenter today is Sheila Laird, who is a registered dietitian, board certified in sports dietetics, and certified personal trainer, and she will provide the valuable information to answer that question. Sheila has a bachelor's of science in foods and nutrition and attended Indiana University Medical Center, where she completed a dietetic internship and master's of science in clinical nutrition. I've had the pleasure of working with Sheila over the past 20 years, and Sheila's other passions are her family, and she has competed in multiple distance triathlons, which included the World Championship in Kona, Hawaii. During this webinar, you will have the opportunity to submit questions for Sheila using the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. We look forward to you learning valuable and practical information from Sheila. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Sheila.
Okay, let me get into my screens. All right. Welcome, everybody. I am so glad you're here because I have always felt that my job as a dietitian is to take science and make it make sense to everybody. And supplements is a hot topic. And it's a hot topic for a lot of reasons. So when we get into this discussion, I want you to really think about how it applies to you. So let's dig in, because I also want to get through the presentation so that we have time to answer your questions. And if we do run out of time, or you have a question that maybe you don't want to put publicly, send those to me, send them to Paul. I'd be glad to help you out with answering your questions. Okay, so there we go. Let's see, here we go. All right. So before buying a supplement, I've got a list of questions here, quite a few. And so just personally ask yourself, give yourself the answer. Ask yourself the question, answer it to yourself. So the first one is, does your current blood work indicate a need? So what this is going to say is, well, have you had any lab work done in the last year or two? And if you have, do you know how to interpret it? Are you falling within standard levels or optimal levels? We're going to talk a little bit about that. Does your diet include all food groups? Have you eliminated food groups? There are some people who have food sensitivities or eliminate food groups just because they don't like that food group. Maybe they can't eat that food group, such as leaving out dairy or leaving out vegetables because they don't like vegetables. My point is, if you have eliminated a food group, there is a potential that you've eliminated quite a few vitamins and minerals. What is the cost-benefit ratio of a supplement? It is a very expensive regimen to put yourself on if the benefit is not there. And this can only be answered by working with a provider who understands your condition, your deficiency, if you have it. But there's a lot of vitamins out there that cost quite a bit, that don't need to be as expensive as they are, but you have to make that determination. Is it worth it if your deficiency does benefit from the supplements? Does the research support its claims? And this one is big. I am constantly looking at all the latest research and what's out there, because it does change. It changes a lot. One of the examples is saturated fats. Research says yes, says no, but when it really at the end, what the research has to support is you, keeping you in context. What is your lifestyle, your family history? Those are the things that we have to look at when we look at research. Are there toxicity concerns, such as creating nutrient deficiencies? And I have actually seen this. I've seen where a person will take a megadose of one vitamin and that competes for the other vitamin and that one drops. An example of that would be taking too much zinc can drive down copper, or taking too much vitamin D and not enough magnesium. So we have to keep things in balance when doing supplements. Does it promise a quick improvement in your health or performance? And that is a red flag, because it's those secrets that, you do this and boy, I'm going to have improvement next month in my health. Continuing with questions. Is it produced in an FDA approved facility? And that means it has this symbol of the GMP, good manufacturing practice. Most of the time, these are put on the label, and sometimes it just is on the website of that particular supplement. But really, all the GMP is doing is the FDA has approved the facility, not the supplement. Is it NSF certified and/or United States Pharmacopoeia, USP certified? I'm going to talk a little bit more about NSF because that's an important one. Does the supplement have a certificate of analysis on its website? And this is particularly true in the CBD products that are out on the market now. If there hasn't been an area that has exploded, it's the CBD products. And there is some very shady CBD out there. If this is something that you are exploring, absolutely go to that company's website and look for a certificate of analysis. And what that does is it looks at the purity of a product. What is it sourced with? Where did the products come from? So another question, does it contain that secret ingredient or formula? And you've probably seen these on commercials where I have the secret, you need to know. And that's truly just all marketing. It plays on your emotional side, not your intellectual side. And I always say, you're smarter than that to know that there's any secret. Is it advertised by use of testimonials? You know that one as well. Open up a magazine and you see the movie stars or the bodybuilders or whoever it is saying, look what I took and wow, look at me. They're getting paid quite a bit to make that testimonial. Are current popular personalities featured in the advertisement, like I just said? I can't help it. One always comes to mind when I think of that, and it's Schwarzenegger with his big muscles and all the stuff he took to get big muscles. And so a lot of people thought, well, this is how I can get big muscles. So that's just one example. There's plenty of personalities out there that are advertising that are getting paid big dollars. Are you on a medication that could interact with a supplement? And this one probably of all is one of the most important ones. This is the one that concerns me when people go to the local health food store and they talk to the clerk and the clerk says, oh, take this. But the clerk has no history on you. They don't know your health history, your medication history. They know nothing on you, but they are telling you to take this particular supplement. Or you go to a big box store or the local drugstore and you just pick up a supplement. It is so important to know which supplements interact with medication. And there's actually places you can go to find this out. And one is the NIH. We'll talk about that in a second, the National Institute of Health. Okay, so this NSF, if you ever see that little insignia on there, the National Sanitation Foundation, it's a company that actually looks at more than just supplements. It looks for all kinds of things, products to meet the public health and safety standards. It's very rigorous. And if the NSF is on there, you're pretty much it's okay. Let's just say it's okay. You know that you're probably getting a safe product. It's probably one of the most rigorous standards we have, along with the US Pharmacopoeia. Many of the products out there, though, they don't put this on the bottle, they'll just put the GMP. So if you're really wondering about a supplement, whether you're taking one now or you're thinking of buying one, go to the website and really hunt around. What are they doing? Are they certified or not? And that will help you make a huge decision. So how does regulation of supplements differ from that of prescription drugs? And this is important because before marketing, drugs undergo clinical studies to determine their effectiveness, safety, possible interactions with other substances, and appropriate dosages. The FDA then reviews this and determines whether to authorize the use of the drug. This is one of the reasons why drugs do get hung up in our country with the FDA's approval, because it is a very rigorous process. Sometimes these same drugs that are held up with the FDA in our country are already being sold in other countries. But that is what we have here. The FDA has these very rigorous requirements before a product goes to market. So unlike our supplements, they're food. They're under the food category. So supplements are not tested before they're marketed. So it's after the fact, once they get to the market, if there's false or misleading label claims, then the FDA can pull it. But a lot of damage has been done many times before supplements are pulled. And I think this is really an issue, I would say, in the weight loss industry supplements. A lot of bad supplements that are being advertised for weight loss that are really very harmful ingredients. Ingredients we don't know where they're sourced from, and they're misleading. The FDA finally catches it and pulls it, possibly after the damage has been done. So just to remember, supplements are not under the FDA, they're a food. So they can get to market without the FDA's approval. So how do you decide? I think one of the things we need to look at is just your body, your blood work, your labs. And there's by no means this is the only 4, but these are the 4 ones that I see typical in clients that I work with. And the first one is vitamin D. And this is particularly important right now within COVID. Let's talk a little more about D in a second. If you don't know your levels, you should. B12. And you think, well, B12, that's not a big issue, but it is if you are a vegan or vegetarian and you don't eat much foods that come from animal sources. But the other thing is that B12 is made in our gut. And as we age, that B12 manufacturing actually goes down. B12 works with other B vitamins like folate. And so many times when B12 is down, other B vitamins are also down. Iron panel with ferritin, particularly for women pre and post-menopause. If I see an active woman, no matter what her age is, I will ask for an iron panel. And I want to know the ferritin. We'll get into this a little more in depth as well. And your lipid panel. We're looking at total cholesterol, high density lipoproteins, low density lipoproteins, and triglycerides. So these are 4 labs that are not outrageous, that your doctor shouldn't say, well, why do you want these? These are not outrageous labs. Believe me, there's a lot more I could add to that list, but I narrowed it down to these. Okay, so let's take D. So the benefits are less fatigue, improved thinking, cognition. It enhances immune health, promotes healthy bones, reduces the risk of cancer, heart disease, diabetes, and MS, multiple sclerosis. In the time of COVID right now, we need to be looking at what is an optimal level and what is a standard level. And I just read again, literally this morning, a study that came through showing the benefits of D for those persons who were infected with COVID and recovered. It's such an easy vitamin to get. It's a cheap vitamin. It's a supplement that we can all get. So let's look at your levels. If you don't know your levels, I encourage you to get it done. Standard levels, optimal. Okay, we got to keep that in mind. If you get your levels done and you come back at 30, 31, you will not be flagged, but it's low. It's not optimal at all. And most of the studies these are current studies. Remember, we have to stay what's current. And optimal is getting that number up there towards 50 to 70. And that's what this study I read this morning about COVID patients having higher vitamin Ds were recovering quicker. So D, moving on to what are the recommendations? Right now, the RDA is that 400 to 800 IUs a day is what you should be taking, which is too low. But the safe upper limit in Canada and United States is 4,000. 1,000 to 2,000 IUs in a vitamin D3, is sufficient to meet the needs of most of the population. And again, I want to reiterate, optimal versus standard. So if you haven't done a vitamin D test, you haven't got the labs, should you supplement? So I asked, well, let's look at your diet. You can get D in some foods. It's actually in mushrooms, it's in dairy. I don't really call it the sunshine vitamin anymore because we are far from the equator. And with the ozone layer being thick, and even lately, even thicker with smoke, we are not getting the UV rays to manufacture it in our skin. As we age, we lose the ability of D to be manufactured in our skin. So if you feel you fall into any of those categories, yes, 1,000 to 2,000 IUs of vitamin D3 is okay and safe. But if you've been on vitamin D and you haven't been tested, I encourage you to. And if your doctor doesn't want to do the test for whatever reason, you can actually go online. There's lots of labs direct to consumer now that are doing them. Quest Labs is one. Direct Labs is another one. You can just Google it, Direct Labs to consumer. And for like $40, you can get a vitamin D test if your doctor doesn't want to do it and have insurance pay for it. Okay, so the next one is B12. And you would think, well, I never get B12 checked. Most doctors don't typically do this one, but I find this low in persons as they're aging. Now, in the 20s, 30s, most often people are eating enough to get adequate B12. So again, the reference range, if you were to do a blood test, is 200 to 700. And that's fine, but that's a big range. What I want to see is, I love to see 700, 750, because the optimal is 500 to 1300. But again, too high is not good either, because you get it too high, you're going to have reflexes in your muscles, potentially decrease brain atrophy, confusion, weakness, depression. So people who take drops of B12 sometimes show up with these huge numbers and immediately should go off of B12. So a lot of people take the drops, or they'll put the sublingual under your tongue. So again, this is one of those vitamins, if you take too much, you could create that nutrient deficiency and drive down some of the other B vitamins. So why it's good to have labs done. So should you supplement with B12? Well, the answer is yes, if you're a strict vegan, because vegans do not have any sources of animal products in their diet, and that is where B12 comes from. If you are vegetarian with limited intake of eggs and dairy, because that's where B12 comes from. If you have IBS, and that is irritable bowel syndrome, and that's a malabsorption issue. So again, remember I said B12 is made in the gut, and if you have malabsorption, you're not going to see very substantial levels of B12. Older folks, as I said, with poor diets, they don't get outside, they don't eat enough, are all at risk for low B12. Taking acid blockers such as Prilosec, Pepcid, proton pump inhibitors are probably one of the worst things a person can be taking for their gut health. These things completely change the acid environment of your gut. We need acid. We need to have the acid to break down certain enzymes for vitamins. If there is gastric reflux, GERD, the bigger issue is why and what's causing it, not just take something to quiet it down. Because downstream, you're going to end up with another problem. So I always encourage people to let's dig into, well, why do you even have GERD? Why do you have reflux? And fix that problem. Celiac, people who have sensitivities to gluten, Crohn's, those are again, two malabsorption issues. Hypothyroid, oftentimes a low thyroid has low B12. B vitamins and D feed the thyroid. And I am going to talk briefly about thyroid because it's so important. It won't apply to everybody, but I am going to mention it. Or history of heavy drinking can also disrupt the gut microbiome that I keep talking about, how healthy that gut needs to be to make these Bs, and drinking heavy alcohol can affect it. So how much should you take? So if you are looking at let's say a bottle, a multivitamin, you're going to see a lower level. You're going to see something maybe around that 1.8, 2 micrograms. But typically doses of B12 will go as high as 25. And this is where you need to be careful. You don't just randomly start taking B12 because you want more energy or you think it's going to help you lose weight. No, no, no. That's not why we do it. We do it because you've got other conditions. Keep it in context to you. If your diet doesn't look great, yes, a B12 might be helpful for you. Okay, moving on to iron. And this does apply to men as well. I have actually seen low iron in men, believe it or not. And low iron can lead to fatigue, absolutely, because iron helps with red blood cells. Red blood cells carry oxygen. Depression, impaired thinking, restless leg syndrome. Absolutely, we've seen the correlations of low iron and restless legs. Thyroid. Iron feeds the thyroid. We need iron for a healthy thyroid. And low max VO2 in athletes. Many athletes who struggle, and everybody's an athlete if you're out there moving, feel like their heart rate's up, they're breathing hard. And what really is going on is the iron's low in your blood. So if you were to ask for an iron lab, typically you're going to get this full panel. And this is kind of a wordy slide, but I put it out there because there's no real way to just summarize an iron panel. My point of this is that we don't just look at iron, we don't just look at ferritin. Ferritin is your storage. The other ones here are your transporters. How much can you actually move through the blood? So a doctor or a provider or a dietitian knows how to read these panels. And you want to ask for an iron panel if you've never had one, or you fall into that category of vegan, thyroid. It's something that if you've never had one, potentially talk to your doctor, do I need one? Depending on keeping it in context for your lifestyle. looking at ferritin, and this is the one that looks at how much are you storing. So if you went in to say, I just need a ferritin, that's not going to be accurate, because if it's high, it can also mean inflammation. And we've seen this. High ferritin means that something else is going on in the body, some sort of systemic inflammation. So optimal, again, is 50 and above. Endurance athletes and females particularly. If you get your numbers and they come back 30, it's not going to flag you, and you will be under the standard reference range. So if it comes back low and you need to supplement, the best form is a chelated form of iron, and that's a gentle one that breaks down easier in your gut. It's called iron bisglycinate or chelated iron. It's often referenced on the label like that. And you always want to take it with a food source of vitamin C. It helps transport that iron into helping you create a higher storage of ferritin. Now, again, how much iron should you be taking is very independent to your lifestyle. So one of the things I do see is people taking the wrong form of some of these vitamins, and iron salts are hard on the gut. These are the ones that make people say, I'm not taking iron anymore. It just made me constipated and I got sick. So I would encourage you to look for the right forms of these vitamins, particularly iron, if you need it. Okay, so let's talk about your lipid panel. So total cholesterol is your typical one that we see. And what we know now from a lot of current studies is that just because total is high doesn't mean you're doomed for heart disease. Does not mean you need to go on a medication. Really, that's not the whole picture. We want to look at the LDLs, and that's always been called your bad cholesterol. And these may contribute to cardiovascular disease. A note on LDLs is that if you have a history in your family of heart disease, of elevated LDLs, the nasty cholesterol, you might want to investigate getting an advanced lipid panel. And I'm not going to go a lot into it because it is very in-depth, a little bit complicated to explain, but what the LDL advanced lipid panel looks at is a particle size and numbers. And it's important because it takes you one step beyond just LDLs. HDL, your high density lipoprotein, is the good one. That's the one that we want to be as high as we can make it. And sometimes it's hard to get that one up. Triglycerides is a fatty acid in your blood, and this is definitely, if it elevated, can lead to some cardiovascular disease. We often see this in persons that might even have a sensitivity to breaking down fructose, because that'll affect the triglycerides. There's a lot of reasons why a triglyceride number might be high and everything else looks fine. So again, we never just look at one thing in isolation. We want to look at the whole panel. So your lipid panel, again, we're looking at, there's these borderline numbers and there's the desirable. I wholeheartedly want people to stay on the desirable, and that is keeping cholesterol total around 200 and below. Triglycerides 150 and below. Now HDL to get to 60 is a real challenge for some people. Athletes tend to have a higher HDL, but not all. And interestingly enough, a high fiber diet can lead to higher levels of the good cholesterol. Just like a high fiber diet can lead to lower numbers of the bad cholesterol. That high fiber diet, which helps feed that microbiome. So when you take the ratio of what your total is to your HDLs, that's the one you want to look at. Because if cholesterol is high, well, it might be high because your HDLs are high. So look at the ratio. So anything 4 and below is very good. So keep this in mind. High risk, you do want to act on it. definitely act on it. So, are there supplements to lower cholesterol? No, not really. There's a lot of medications, but the best one is lifestyle and diet. It's fiber. I am a huge proponent of fiber for so many reasons. And so let's look at the types of fiber. Soluble fiber, this is the kind that has that pectin and the gums, and has the psyllium husk, and it's the fructans. It's basically the fiber that is fermented in your gut, makes these short chain fatty acids. In turn, those short chain fatty acids contribute to lowering cholesterol because it's changing the microbiome of your gut. So many reasons why having a high fiber diet is good. Lowers inflammation, can help sequester that cholesterol and get it out. So the dietary fiber adds bulk, absorbs cholesterol, increases excretion through the feces. And examples are, and if you eat any of these, you're on your way. Carrots, broccoli, onion, artichokes, fruits, bananas, berries, apples, pears, legumes, oats, and barley. It used to be thought that when I have to lower my cholesterol, I'm going to eat oats. And that's great. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with barley, but there's a lot of other carbohydrate containing foods that have fiber that are going to help you lower your cholesterol and improve your gut microbiome. Okay, if triglycerides are high, there is a supplement that can help, and that is fish oil. And we've seen this in numerous studies. 2,000 milligrams of EPA and DHA, that's the omegas in your fish oil. You would have to look on the label, add the omegas together and see, do they even equal 2,000? Truly though, a therapeutic dose of elevated triglycerides is up towards 4,000 EPA DHA. And that again is where you would want to work with somebody that knows, well, do you need to stay on fish oil to lower triglycerides? It can't hurt anybody, but there could be other things going on. Why are your triglycerides high and everything else looks good, or everything else looks bad and triglycerides are up? So then you would look at diet, lifestyle, exercise, get the HDLs up. So I wanted to include this picture. If you want to make a note of where it came from, it's the Cleveland Heart Labs. And Cleveland Heart Labs is in the forefront of looking at these advanced lipid panels. Women kind of get left behind when we're talking about heart disease. So I like to bring this up when talking to all groups, but not just men. So when we were talking about that lipoprotein, the LDL, the bad guy, if you continually have high levels of LDL, this is what can happen in the artery. It builds up. Sometimes these, I call them little sandcastles, will break off and create a stroke. But sometimes they don't break off and they just get so high that it occludes the artery. This is why LDLs need to be looked at and keeping it serious. There's risk for heart disease is still out there despite all the interventions. Yes, statins can bring down LDLs, but with statins comes other issues. So you have to weigh out risk reward. If your LDLs are so high that you need to be on a statin, I encourage my clients to go on the statins. But if you can stay off the statins, yes, stay off the statins. But sometimes we have to look at risk and reward, weigh those out. All right, a little bit on thyroid. I don't want to, this can be very complicated. This is an hour alone on thyroid dysfunction. And is there supplements or medications that can help? So I didn't list this in that 4 basic labs, but honestly, you should probably talk to your doctor about getting just maybe some of the basic thyroid panels done. You hear panel and doctors often roll their eyes. or just say thyroid hormones. So there's no single cause for why someone might have a low thyroid. It's very multifactorial. Autoimmune disease of different kinds can cause an attack on thyroid. And sometimes this can lead to Hashimoto's, where the antibodies get so high that it attacks the thyroid gland. High levels of estrogen can cause a decrease in the active thyroid. So women who are in their 40s and estrogen goes up, down, up, down, up, down, while they're in perimenopause, start seeing weird things going on with their thyroid. Inflammation, systemic inflammation, not the kind that you cut your finger, but systemic inside, the inflammatory things with heart disease, diabetes. These can also affect your thyroid, and it can affect the ability of the bound thyroid hormone T4 to convert to the active one, T3. Cortisol, high levels of cortisol, constantly, chronically high levels of cortisol can affect and suppress conversion of T4 to T3. Now, cortisol, that's the stress hormone. Who hasn't had stress this year? And this again is something to keep an eye on for all people, men, women, is that cortisol. And are there products that bring down cortisol? We'll get to that in a little bit, but mostly it is lifestyle and controlling, managing stress. The other one that can cause a thyroid to be off is if you are gluten sensitive or you have celiac, because in that protein in the gluten, the body will think of it as a foreign object, gliadin, creates these antibodies, and it attacks the thyroid. So if you fall into any of these scenarios, you might want to talk to your doctor about, how's my thyroid? So should you take a medication or supplement? And we know medications are very effective for correcting thyroid disorders. Absolutely, hands down. But how much and which kind? And this is where you want to work with your doctor or someone who's versed in the right form of thyroid medication. It can sometimes just be a little bit. I just thought of someone, I worked with a fellow who was in his 50s, high stress, couldn't figure out why he couldn't even get through his morning routine in the gym. He had a thyroid done, sure enough. He went on a very small dose, and within 3 weeks, he was like, I feel so much better. And it didn't take much, but he hadn't thought about getting his thyroid checked. Supplements that can assist the thyroid there's that D again. D feeds thyroid. Fish oil, because of the inflammation. Fish oil does help reduce inflammation. And then there are functional medicine thyroid specific supplements. And these is what you have to work with a provider familiar with these. I know of several products that I work with some of my clients. Some are on thyroid meds, some are not. But you need to know what you're doing if you were to go that route. So what are the nutrient demands if your thyroid is being attacked? Iodine is big, and iodine has gone down in a lot of people's diets because they have gone low salt. So they're not, because iodine used to be in salt shakers, or people are doing sea salt. And so iodine has gone down, and that's a problem. We really don't want to be taking iodine supplements unless you have to. But selenium and iodine work in tandem. There's another one of those nutrient deficiencies. You take too much of one, you're going to drive down the other. So selenium is definitely one that feeds the thyroid. Selenium is in foods. It's in Brazil nuts. It's in all kinds of dark leafies and seeds and nuts. Zinc, required for the synthesis of thyroid. Iron and D. So again, there's iron, there's D, which is one of the reasons why I think that is something to be on top of, because it feeds other organs in your body. The thyroid gut connection. If you have gut issues like indigestion, gas, bloating, you could potentially have what's called leaky gut. And this is an inflamed gut. So what comes first? We're not sure. Did the low thyroid hormones lead to immune dysfunction, which led to a leaky gut, which leads to inflammation? Or did you have inflammation, which led to the leaky gut, which led to the poor thyroid? We don't know. It goes in circles. But if I was to be a detective, I would say, well, we first start with the gut. Healthy gut, we'll figure out what's going on with your gut, fix it, and see what else happens. Everything starts with the gut. If it has got a healthy microbiome, lots of good bacteria, you're well on your way to avoiding a lot of these issues. Okay, so with vegans, this is a problem for nutrient demands. So if you know of someone vegan or you are vegan, one of the things I see is that they probably are not getting as much protein as they should be. And this is particularly important for women who lose muscle faster than men, keeping that protein up. And how to get it if you're vegan. It can be done. Those omega-3 fatty acids, and they go, well, wait a minute, that's fish. We're going to get to that because EPA and DHA is an important omega to have in your diet. Calcium. I'm not a proponent of taking calcium supplements. The research is not there that it's needed. And excuse me, if you're taking calcium, it should always be with the cofactors of D and magnesium and K. Taking just a big clump of calcium is potentially depositing in arteries. So you want to take it with cofactors if you think you need it. But if you're vegan, you're not getting probably calcium from dairy, so you have to get it from green leafies, which is a little harder to absorb. Vitamin D, there it is again, trying to keep your D levels up. Iron, we mentioned that already, the bisglycinate, zinc, and B12 are all the ones that are in demand when you are a strict vegan. Okay, so this omega-3 fatty acid dilemma for vegetarian athletes, and I'll just skim through this quickly, but really what we're looking at is we need that ALA, that alpha-linolenic. There's linoleic and linolenic acids. And these are in flax seeds, chia seeds, walnuts, edamame. But the body has to convert that ALA in the food into DHA and EPA. It's not very efficient at doing that. And to get the number up of DHA and EPA that a vegetarian or vegan needs, you'd have to eat a lot of flaxseed, chia seeds, edamame, a lot. So the conversion, because it's poor, most likely you're going to be low. So you're going to get a trace amount, but it really is an upstream battle. So the solution for this is if you are looking for a non-fish, you can do algae. And this is one that you have to be very careful on taking algae because it has to be organic, regulated by US Pharmacopoeia or NSF. I also have written down there, consumerlab.com. It's a subscription site, some of you might already know it, that does analyze a lot of these supplements that we're talking about. Another one that looks at supplements, it's not as comprehensive as Consumer Lab, is called LabDoor, L-A-B, Door, LabDoor. NIH, the NIH is a great one that has lots of information. The National Institute of Health has great information on some of these supplements and the conditions that we've been talking about. So in the interest of time, I'm going to just go through this one really quick and because I really want to get to some questions. But I'm bringing this up because this is coming down the pike into the Western world, you might say. Adaptogens, what are they? And this has been in the Eastern medicine for hundreds of years. Adaptogens are basically plant chemicals. They're plants that help your body adapt or to increase resistance to physical, chemical, and biological stresses. That's all they are. There's several different ones out there, and I'm just going to run through a few of them. If you have questions about them, email me. But I'm bringing this up because I want you to be aware, again, where are you buying these, where are they sourced, and don't believe the hype unless you know what you're taking. But there are some excellent studies going back to even in World War II. Pilots were using them for fatigue, and a very interesting study about submarine crews that were taking adaptogens to stay alert without, it's not like caffeine alert, it's a different kind. A common one you might see a lot of is ashwagandha. And this is a plant, and this does decrease anxiety, cortisol, that stress hormone, decreases fatigue, depression, CRP, that's inflammation, which also can be seen in a blood test. And it can help lower thyroid stimulating hormone. So again, that's why you have to be careful if you're using these and you don't know what your labs are. So ashwagandha is an interesting one, and it's calming, but it has to be done correctly, and it takes time to absorb. It takes maybe 2-3 weeks is ashwagandha. You have to be careful with it because it does increase serum T3 and T4. Those are those thyroid hormones. But it can also increase DHEA and testosterone. Those are two adrenal, well, DHEA is an adrenal hormone, and testosterone. It's an anti-inflammatory, basically a COX-2 inhibitor is just like an NSAID. It's like a prostaglandin. It inhibits the inflammatory response to exercise. So it is an anti-inflammatory, and it can help with moderating blood glucose. Rhodiola is another one that takes effect within 2 to 7 days. And this one, it's safe. This one can reduce fatigue under stress, may improve exercise capacity. Who doesn't like that one? Improve your mental performance. Your boss will like that. Anti-inflammatory. It is good for hot flashes, you perimenopause and menopause women. And depression may improve in mild cases. And I have studies on a lot of these. A lot of these studies came right out of the NIH. Not all of them, but a lot of them. So they are well documented. Maca is a plant from Peru. And the Peruvians have been chewing on this plant for years as they go up into the high altitudes of the Peruvian mountains. It grows at high altitude. It moderates estrogen. So if you're estrogen dominant, this is something you might look into. It's good for those vasomotor symptoms for women who have hot flashes. Improves physical stamina. That's why the Peruvians chew on this plant. But if you are on thyroid meds, it's best to probably not go on maca unless you're working with someone that knows how to use both. And the last one I'm going to mention is Shashandra. And this one is also it acts as a weak phytoestrogen. So it induces oxidation of mitochondria, meaning it enhances aerobic capacity. It stimulates central nervous system, kind of like caffeine, but it doesn't have the jitters like caffeine. It just kind of makes you a little alert. So this would be something that's done early in the day. But then again, it can interact with some estrogen. You need to be careful. Lots of people that use it put it in their coffee, but it can improve mental and physical performance. Now, I know I ran through those adaptogens quickly, but I wanted to just maybe put those words out there for you to see so that when it starts getting mainstream and gets diluted, we keep going back to the studies, the cultures that have used these adaptogens for years. So in summary, just beware when you go into a store, a market, the grocery store, the big boxes, when you buy those supplements. Be really careful, be discriminating, and look on the label. And if it's not on the label, go to the website. Read that fine print. It's so important. We need to know where these raw ingredients are coming from. Many of them have been historically outsourced, or not outsourced, but sourced from China. And so there's a lot of supplement companies that are scrambling because they can't get the raw ingredients. work with somebody who knows the mechanisms and your medication supplement interactions. That is so critical, because if you're on any kind of medication and you start on a supplement, you could create a double whammy. But I love to first just say, let's live by the motto food first. You don't have to take supplements if your diet is good, gut is healthy, you're eating in the produce department, all those things that then you say, you know what, I'm going to take my money to the local produce store, or the produce company, or stores, the markets, excuse me, the local produce markets, and that are coming back during the weekends, and spend my money there and buy your vitamins there. So I'm going to stop sharing and get back to Paul and see if we can get some questions in. It looks like we have a little bit of time. And okay, so looking at, oh, the dosage on rhodiola. You missed that dosage. Oh gosh. And I'd have to look it up because I don't memorize these, but I certainly can get that to who asked for the dosage on rhodiola. I can go back and let me look. Hang on. Let me go back into the screen and see if we can just go right back in there. Let's see. Oh, now I'm in a different screen. Here we go. So I'm not screen sharing. I can look that up for you though. It's not hard. Rhodiola is a very well studied, documented, safe for the right reasons on rhodiola. So I will get that to you. So does anybody else have questions? Feel free to put those in the chat down at the bottom in the Q&A or the chat. I have a question for you. How many of you, maybe you can just say this in the chat, yes, no, yes, no. How many of you know your vitamin D levels? And I'd be curious to see down there at the bottom in the chat, you can just put yes, no, or maybe you don't want to say no. You don't want to incriminate yourself. That's great. No, there's two no's. Two no's. Yeah. It's amazing to me, really, how an anonymous, that's fine. So 3 no's so far. I might say the cost benefit for D is so positive. It's not an expensive vitamin to buy. Vitamin D3. That's one of the ones that I'm not concerned about with form. D3 is D3. You can go to Walgreens and get D3. But I do encourage you to find out what your levels are. As we stay in the throes of the virus, as we go into the flu season, you should know it. You should definitely know your D. I'm going to give you an example of there was just a 15-year-old male take Shashandra. He has brain fog. Yes, you would start with a very low dose, very low, and watch for symptoms. If they improve, how that changes. A lot of the brain fog with teenagers these days is that they're just overwhelmed. But here's another one. I was working with a 23, 24-year-old college student, always getting sick. But to look at him, you would think, oh, this is the picture of health. This guy, he was lean, he was muscular, he played sports, but he was constantly getting sick. And he even had a slight darkness under his eyes. And I said, let's just get your D checked. Let's just do it. It's never been done. His D came back 23. Now, for the standard levels, it was 30 was the cutoff. 23. So his doctor wanted to put him on a regimen that I said, no, wait, no, we're going to do a different one. We're going to do one that is more effective. And so so this was in January. We should be getting a retest soon to see if it's budged up. He hasn't been sick. His dark circles are gone. He is sleeping fine. But who would have thought a young, strapping, muscular 23-year-old would have a D in the 23s? And part of it was where he was living. He was not in a lot of sun. He should have been able to absorb it if he was outside. He's at that age. So my point in saying this is that don't think you have a good, adequate level of D just by how you might say, well, I'm just doing good. I lift weights, I exercise, but not necessarily. And the other thing is also D can get trapped in the fat cells. It's a fat soluble vitamin. So if there is a little extra percent body fat, your potential D could be low and harder to get up. It takes time. It takes about 3 months to get this start trending up. Let's see, any other questions are coming in? No, I think yeah, so there's Paul. Looks like we are wrapping up to the hour.
So I just want all the participants to know that this webinar is being recorded, and I will send that over to Mike Redfern so that he can make it available to the employees. And if you have any further questions, you can contact Savvy Health Solutions directly. But I am just so in awe whenever I listen to Sheila talk, because I continually learn things every time I watch her webinars. So thank you all for participating. And Sheila, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
For your presentation, and it was awesome. So
Okay.
Thank you, everybody, and hope to see you in the near
Take
future.
care. Thank you.
Thank you.